Welcome to this webinar. My name is Sane Bondara, and today I will tell you more details on the project budget lines. That will help you to plan your project budget according to the eligibility rules set by the program and develop a sound proposal to be submitted to the third call for proposals for the Interreg Central Europe program. To begin with, the project budget is to be developed considering all the activities planned in the project, as well as the involvement of the relevant project partners to achieve the set project objectives. Thus, the overall project budget structure has several layers. Project partner budgets, cost distribution between work packages, which is the main part to determine the connection of the project content, the expenditure for implementation, and the timeline of the project in the form of reporting periods, and the last layer, cost distribution between budget lines. The most important layer to ensure the eligibility of the project expenditure, and the one we will talk about now, is the layer of project cost distribution between budget lines. According to the eligibility rules set by the Interreg Central Europe program, there are 6 budget lines. Budget line 1 dealing with staff costs, budget line 2 for the office and administrative costs, budget line 3 for travel and accommodation costs, budget line 4 for costs of external expertise and services, budget line 5 for equipment costs, and last but not least, budget line 6 for the costs of infrastructure and works. The expenditure foreseen for implementation of the project within work packages also has to be structured according to the respective 6 budget lines. But now, let's discuss them one by one. Budget line 1, staff costs, is one of the budget lines related to the expenditure for having staff to work with project implementation. It can be not only the project manager and finance manager dealing with the administrative side of the project, but also specialists or researchers involved in the implementation of the project content activities. The only precondition, the persons have to be employed by the project partner institution and have the relevant documentation to show the employment status. There are 2 methods of reimbursement for this budget line. The first is based on the real costs, with the eligible costs limited to salary payments and any other payments related to the salaries, provided that those are either fixed in the employment document or according to the national legislation or internal partner institution regulations, and in all cases are not recoverable by the employer. The other method is a 20% flat rate from other direct costs of the respective project partner budget, which in practical terms means that it is a 20% flat rate from the total project partner budget, lines 3 to 6. This is one of the simplified cost options, thus no detailed employment documentation is needed. The only precondition is that project partner has to demonstrate that it has at least 1 employee involved in the project. This could be a good option in cases the project partner does not have significant partner budget and the administrative effort to report staff costs based on real cost principle is too high, as well as for those project partners with very small number of employees, or in one-man companies where the owners represent the company and work in the project without any employment contract as such. Be aware that the staff cost reimbursement method has to be selected at the stage of project application, and this method cannot be changed, neither during project contracting nor during project implementation. Next is budget line 2, office and administrative cost. This budget line covers operating and administrative expenses of the project partners that are necessary for the implementation of the project. A very easy budget line. It is a simplified cost option, 15% flat rate automatically calculated from the eligible direct staff cost budget. This budget line is set to be 15% flat rate on the program level, so you cannot choose to use real costs in this budget line instead, or not to use this budget line at all. According to the program rules, there is only certain cost categories that fall under this budget line, and the exhaustive list you can find in our application manual in Part B, Chapter 273, and the implementation manual in Part C, Chapter C21, both of which are available on our program website. But just to give you at least some examples, Costs related to the rent of the office premises, utility costs, costs of the office supplies, and monthly mobile phone bills are the cost categories eligible under this budget line. As already stressed before, no direct costs are eligible under this budget line. Budget line 3 covers the expenditure plan for travels within the project. The most important thing to remember about this budget line is that costs under budget line 3 cover the travels and accommodation only of the staff employed by the project partner institutions. Also, the cost categories under this budget line are limited to the following 5: travel costs, costs of meals, accommodation costs, costs of visas if applicable, and last but not least, daily allowances. As the projects are about the European territorial cooperation, it can happen that the project partners have to travel for meetings or events outside Interreg Central Europe program area. Such travel should be planned beforehand and included in the application form already when applying to consider it approved. But as of course you cannot always foresee everything, in cases such travels were not initially planned and included in application form, you have to remember that a prior approval is required by the Joint Secretariat. As already mentioned, budget line 3 refers only to travel and accommodation costs of the staff of project partners, and this means that the travel and accommodation costs of external experts or associated partners for participation in the project activities or events have to be budgeted under budget line 4, external expertise and services. Next in line is budget line 4, which covers the costs of external expertise and services. This budget line applies to all the external expertise and services provided by a public body or private body or a natural person outside of the project partner institution that are subcontracted to carry out certain tasks or activities, which are clearly linked to the project and are essential for its successful implementation. External expertise and services costs are paid on the basis of contracts or written agreements and against invoices or requests for reimbursement. According to the program rules, there are only certain cost items that are eligible under this budget line, and the exhaustive list you can find in our application manual in Part B, Chapter 273, and the implementation manual in Part C, Chapter C24, available on our website. But just to give you an impression of the costs related to the intellectual property rights, studies and surveys, cost of trainings, travel costs of external experts and associated partners, as well as costs for financial management and legal consultancy are just some of the cost items eligible under this budget line. A very important aspect of this budget line is the fact that all contracts or agreements have to be made in accordance to the public procurement rules set by the European Union, Interreg Central Europe program, and national legislation. It is very important to choose the correct procurement procedure for the foreseen contracts, and even more important, to remember that you have to choose the strictest procedure set in the respective conditions of the contracts from the European Union program and national level. Public procurement rules also apply to the project partners, which otherwise would not fall under the requirements set for the public procurement. And even though procurement is usually mentioned together with budget line 4 because of the highest number of contracts and purchases, the procurement rules apply in equal measures to the other budget lines, namely budget line 3 to the extent applicable while executing project travels, as well as budget line 5 and 6 for purchases of equipment, infrastructure, or works. Be aware that costs for tasks subcontracted to in-house bodies and costs referring to cooperation between public bodies are eligible if they are charged on a real cost basis, and such costs also need to be included under the relevant budget line depending on the type of the costs, not only under budget line 4. Budget line 5 covers the costs of equipment purchased, rented, or leased by the project partner, which is essential for successful implementation of the project. According to the program rules, two categories of equipment have been foreseen for the purposes of the project implementation. The first category is the equipment for general office use, like computers, office furniture, and other similar items that are needed for project implementation and are not already included in the cost categories eligible under budget line 2. For this category of equipment, only depreciation costs are eligible for reimbursement. The second equipment category is the thematic equipment that has to be directly linked or has to form part of the project outputs. This equipment must be also in line with the program requirements for investments. The costs of equipment under this category can be reimbursed in full if otherwise considered eligible. It is important to remember that in case the costs of a single investment, be it a thematic equipment or the infrastructure or works budgeted under budget line 6, is above 15,000 euros, a separate investment specification has to be included in the application form. According to the program rules, there are only certain cost items that are eligible under this budget line, and the exhaustive list you can find in our application manual in Part B, Chapter 273, and our implementation manual in Part C, Chapter C51, available on our website. But just to give you an impression of the cost items related, costs related to the office equipment, furniture and fittings, and specific laboratory equipment are just some of the cost items eligible under this budget line. In addition, also different consumables that are linked to the use of laboratory or other thematic equipment are eligible and should be included under this budget line. And last but not least, budget line 6. This budget line applies to the costs related to the execution of an infrastructure that is essential for the implementation of the project and its objectives. The costs of the respective infrastructure and works can either refer to an object that will be newly set up during the project implementation or to the adaptation of an already existing infrastructure. In any case, these costs are only eligible if complying with program requirements for investments. As sometimes it is hard to distinguish between a simple service and works related to infrastructure, Article 2 of the Directive 2014/24/EU of the European Parliament and of the Council, dated 26th of February 2014, provides the definition for works that is also applied in the project context in the Interreg Central Europe program. Furthermore, Annex 2 of this directive also provides a detailed list of all the elements that are eligible under this budget line, and is to be seen as the exhaustive list of eligible elements under budget line 6 in the program scope. Be aware that costs for infrastructure and works outside the Interreg Central Europe program area are not eligible. This was all on budget lines. For further information on how to develop a sound project budget, as well as further advice on project content and eligibility of costs of your project proposal, please refer to the application manual that you will find on our program website in the section Apply. Thank you very much for your attention, and we wish you good luck with your project proposal.